Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for another edition of Inside the Zone. He's Blake Seaberg of the News Sentinel. I'm Glenn Marini here at Wayne TV, and we got a lot to talk about because the Komets just wrapped up their series on Saturday night against Kalamazoo, and it's the old hurry up and wait.
Yep.
In the ECHL postseason, as they wait for Toledo and Wheeling to get their schedule or get their series finished. But first off, Blake, what are your takeaways from the Komets series against Kalamazoo? Because the Komets were, I don't want to say dominant. They were the better team on the ice, and there were games that I think looked more dominating until you really delved into them. Maybe much so more on paper.
I think it was a series between rivals.
Yeah,
it was exactly what you expected that way. A lot of people wondered if the Komets were tough enough to win in the playoffs. Well, it's never going to have to be any tougher than they were in that series. I mean, they were plenty tough enough. They weren't always the smartest, taking some penalties that were a little odd, which could absolutely kill them in the next round. But I thought it was a series between rivals. I mean, these guys had obviously played 20 times against each other this year. They hated each other, and you saw it.
Roman Will. At the beginning of the series,
I'd like to be his agent.
I know. Well, at the beginning of the series,
wouldn't that be cool?
After this series, it would be great. At the beginning of the series, we were talking about, well, will he choose Pat Nagel? Will he choose Roman Will? He chooses Roman Will, sticks with Roman the whole time. We did not see Pat Nagel in this series. What impressed you about Roman? And then going forward, does Pat Nagel get a crack?
Roman just was incredibly athletic in this series. I felt like that was the difference between him and Joel Martin, is Roman was a little bit more acrobatic, a little bit more athletic. I think Roman was able to make more game-saving type stops, and Joel did a bunch of those too. I'm not criticizing Joel at all, but Roman was just a little bit better, and his defense was better.
Going forward, like I said, do you think there's a chance we
I think
Pat in goal?
I think you will see Pat in goal. I really do. I think you're going to see Pat in goal maybe in Toledo. I mean, you want a veteran over there, maybe, where it's going to be high flying, and he's a guy who can calm things down if they play Toledo. Mm-hmm. We don't know if they're playing Toledo.
We do not know that yet, and actually, if you'd have asked a week ago, many people would have said it might be Wheeling. We'll get into that in a second, but I want to talk about Matthew Pistilli, because as we were talking about last week, we knew that Kalamazoo was going to try to limit the money line, so it was the second line that really needed to step up.
And the money line was still really good. They didn't score a ton, but they were like +6, +5, all of them. Over a 5-game series, you'd take that any day of the week.
But how important was it to have a guy like Matthew step up? He had 4 goals in the series and play as well as he did and help lead that second line, because Crowder set him up a couple of times too.
He did what he did all year. I mean, really, you remember the first game in Indy this year where they were down, 3-0, and he's like, come on, we can do better than this. And he goes out and scores, and on his birthday, and Schrock scores. And, he's kind of, whenever they've been in a tough spot all year and needed somebody to step up, he's been the guy to actually go out and do it and back up what he says. I mean, and I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, he was finally getting his legs back after concussion, and Crowder and Paul and he were really working good. And then when they moved Herdsey over to center, I mean, those two look like they've been playing together all year.
That was the next question I had. Mitchell Hurd came in like gangbusters. I mean, he is just tough to get a body on. So Mitchell Hurd's addition, what does it mean for the Komets? I mean, he had 2 goals in 3 games, and he looked like the fastest guy on the ice.
Oh, he's the biggest guy on the ice, too, it seemed like, too. I mean, he played big. He used his shoulders a lot, and he didn't know where he was going to go, but he was always charging up the middle and really challenging the defense and making them to react to him to open it up for Pistilli and Ouellette and Perlini and those guys, and then defense too. I mean, they had to react to him. He forced the action.
Garrett Muirs.
I know he's a pretty talented guy.
Yeah, it was obvious. Obviously, the K-Wings would agree with that. But what does the addition of not only Mitchell Hurd but also Garrett mean to this team?
Well, I'll tell you what I liked about Garrett, and this is going to be different. I like the fact that he was the 10th forward, and you could put him on any line, and he could go in and juice things up on any line. It wasn't just, okay, we got to worry about him like 4 shifts on the 10th as the 10th guy on the 3rd line. No, I mean, he could, he did great on the power play. He was a real big impact there. He just kind of snuck around, was sneaky and a little dirty at times, and he did what he had to do.
Nobody is completely healthy. No team is completely healthy. Almost nobody.
I don't think any journalists covering this series are completely healthy right now.
That's true, but maybe you. I don't know what your workout
I did sleep at a
regimen is
hotel
like.
last night. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I count that up, chalk it up.
Workout? What's that?
No, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen between these walls. But I want to get your thought on the relative health of the Komets.
Yeah.
Not that you're going to hear a lot from them about injuries. They're going to be as tight-lipped as possible in the playoffs. But where are they health-wise? Because to me, it seems like they're about as healthy as you could ask for at this time of the season.
Oh, yeah, coming out of a series with Kalamazoo, your arch rival, supposedly. And, yeah, I'd say they're okay. I mean, Paul's got a hand injury. They're not being real specific on that. But they are saying they think he might be able to play, if needed, in the next round. So that's good. There's a lot of bumps and bruises and stuff, and there's a lot of things that people don't know about that guys are battling through. But that's that way at every year at this time. I mean, it's just kind of the job.
Now, obviously, Leach is out, and you would like to have him. But aside from that, relative health is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you what, how about Tam, the way he stepped up to fill that spot? I mean, he was amazing.
Moving on to the possible opponents,
Yeah.
I imagine Toledo's leading this series 3-2. They were down 1-2 at one point. I imagine Komets fans and the Komets themselves, deep down, would love to see Toledo.
I
your
want to see
thought?
Toledo. I mean, this is why you came to the ECHL, was to play Toledo in the playoffs. Now, Toledo's at home for the next two. Wheeling's #1 goaltender's out for the rest of the year. He's got a groin pull or something. But their backup goalie's pretty good too. And I guarantee you, Wheeling packed for 4 games on this road trip. I mean, they're not going to just roll over. You know, if you look at it on paper, Wheeling should not be competing with Toledo this well.
Right.
Which is really a great clue for the Komets, because they're going to have to play like Wheeling plays, I think, in the next series if they play Toledo.
And what do you mean by play like Wheeling plays? What are they doing? Because we've talked about this series, because these two teams have looked like 1A and 1B all season long. Speed is an issue because Toledo's a little bit faster. What do they take from the blueprint? What will Gary Graham? I know he's great at the X's and O's and the breaking down.
That was cool. You know, I'll give you an
What does he take away?
example. The opening goal on the power play Saturday night was the backdoor to Severin from Mbach. He drew that up in the pregame meeting right before they went out. That's what they did. Bang. That was pretty cool. Toledo's, I mean, I got to find out. I want to find out for sure what the guys think. I want to see which is the faster team. Is it them or Toledo? Because that changes the series. Now, Toledo can only play one way. The Komets proved in this series they can play a couple different ways. And they have the flexibility to bang and still use their speed. They still need to bang, especially with Toledo having less rest. Like the 6th game is Tuesday night, and the 7th game, if there is one, would be Wednesday night. Either one, whoever comes out of that's going to be really tired and still beat up for 2 days of rest.
Because they would play regardless. It would be a Friday night.
It's got to be Friday night. Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, the Komets are going to have to be
because the way it works is you've got start dates in the beginning because you have end dates, definitive end dates on the back end that they have to end by, because you can't just wait for a series to get done because there's other teams waiting.
Well, speaking of scheduling dates, the new schedule for next season came out.
Yeah.
Diversity, I think, if you're a Komets fan.
That's the polite way to say it.
And you're waiting for diversity, saying, we played this team too many times. This is a schedule for you, maybe even a little too diverse in some ways.
I don't mind. I don't have to make those road trips, though.
That's true.
You know, I mean, they've got an 8-game road trip, which is the longest road trip since 1962. You and I weren't even born then. That's how old it is.
Oh, my goodness. If it's older than
Although
me,
Bob Chase was on the bus for that one.
I would imagine that he would be.
Yeah.
On the call. So what are your takeaways from the schedule being released? Because
I think it's crazy. Why would you release the schedule now when you're selling tickets for playoff games? Or trying to sell,
I thought it to be odd, but
yeah, I mean, and why would you do it last week when everybody got, if they wanted to, they could announce their home schedule? Now, how was that? What was that about?
Well, but in the breakdown of the schedule, you've only got Indy 11 times. I mean, as
and you don't have Kalamazoo 15.
Well, I was going to say, I saw in your article, I mean, at this point in the season, they've played Kalamazoo 20 times already. 26% of the schedule has been Kalamazoo. So you knock that down with only 11 against Indy next year, 10 against Cincy, 7 against Quad Cities. Those are the most common opponents.
And you actually play Toledo more than Kalamazoo for once, finally.
And you've got West Coast trips teams that have never come to Fort Wayne before are coming to Fort Wayne. Places you've never been, you're going. I mean, you knew that was going to happen with just the different teams in the ECHL, and also shifting to the Western Conference. But I guess it's nice to see that manifest itself on paper.
The hard part is that it's not like this year where the Komets were home every other weekend. No matter what, they were home at least once. There's a couple times in this schedule where they're not going to be home for a couple weeks. There's only 2 road games in, I believe it's January, and there's only 4 home games in, I think, February. I mean, it's kind of crazy that way. You have 15 or 17 home games in the first 3 months against 10 road games, and in the back 3 months, and not including April, you've got 25 road games and 15 home games. But yet they start with 7 and 9 at home, and they end with like 9 out of 11 at home. It's just kind of weird.
Does that help you at all? Like if you're Gary Graham, do you look at it and say, okay, we're going to be home heavy at the beginning, we're going to be road heavy a little bit later? Does that change anything that you do?
I think you'd rather be road heavy in the beginning, if possible. Get away, get to know each other, bond a little, do some of that, which is always on the road more important than at home.
Final takeaway from looking at the schedule, what is it for you?
The fact that they've got the 8-game road trip to Colorado for 1, Rapid City for 2, Colorado for 1, Alaska for 3, then to Evansville. And it's not like it's Evansville from Sunday to Friday, it's Evansville on Wednesday. That game is going to be awful. That game is going to reek so bad because there's going to be so much jet lag and everything, and guys are going to be so bad. It's going to be like a playoff game for one of the teams, and Evansville's going to be sitting there waiting. Now, I think that's going to be an awful game.
Survival of the fittest.
Amen. It will be a good playoff type
Test of character.
Yeah, it'll give them an idea, who's going to compete and who's going to cut it and who's not. It wouldn't shock me if there was a bunch of roster moves after that,
Any final thoughts on what we're looking forward to this coming week for the Komets? Because, like I mentioned, it is a little bit of hurry up and wait if you're a case.
Oh, it is. It really is, but they can't do anything about it, so might as well. What a perfect way to relax. We can't relax, but they can because they don't have to. Their system is pretty much set. They know what they got to do. They did it against Kalamazoo. How many people thought that would be a 5-gamer?
Right.
And the way they did it to win 2 out of 3 up there after losing 5 in a row up there at the end of the season.
Get a little rest, get some sleep in your own bed, hydration, all that good stuff. It has to go into this coming series.
I tell you what, though, it was fun watching some of the stuff that Gary designed and how it worked. And that guy's really, really good at that stuff. He's really good. So he's using all this time to really study both Wheeling and Toledo.
All right, it should be interesting. We will know more certainly by the end of the week as we'll be talking second round ECHL hockey for the Komets, whether they face Wheeling or Toledo. We'll find out pretty darn soon. For Blake, I'm Glenn, and we'll see you next Monday.